Hey everyone, I'm Mari Ray and welcome back to part 2 of the last speed build that we were working on. I think I'm workingly calling this house like modern suburban. I don't really know what else to call it. It really is just a random suburban house reference that I was rebuilding for inspiration reasons. There's no real particular reason why I'm building this except to move Lucas and Omar inside of it, and I thought that it was a simple looking house and I was trying to stay simple, trying to being the key word there because of course I make my life more difficult by the terrain, which is what we're seeing happening right now. I of course needed to be spassy and make some weird elevation going on here with this particular lot, so that's sort of what this part of the speed build is for. I'm still not done with this, by the way, so because I still have some more to do, I don't think I'll have enough time to finish it before I need to record the next episode, so that likely means I'll probably maybe be doing a stream to decorate the inside. We will complete the exterior for the most part in this particular build, and I say for the most part. I had done a little bit of interior work before this video started. I cut it out because in truth, when I get in there and start actually decorating the inside of the house, it's probably gonna change. So I didn't see the point of wasting and bogging down time with this particular speed build to do that. So this one's just gonna focus on the exterior of the house, and I will probably maybe try to do a stream coming up to finish this instead of an episode this weekend because I'm not done with this build yet and the inside still has no decoration. So I'll see how much time I have through my work week when I get home, if I have some time to play around with some of the decorations, but I don't think I'll be finished with enough time before I need to actually have the episode recorded and edited to be released for Saturday, so I doubt that'll happen. Playing around with this terrain though, it was pretty fun. I always like messing with terrain in this game. I feel like I don't do it enough, but you know, the lots being completely flat can sometimes be a little bit boring, so I try to spice it up a bit here, and I think I technically used a different reference of a very similar looking house, which is where the idea of having the little basketball rim came, because in the picture I was looking at, there was a little basketball rim in the driveway, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. So I decided to put one in the driveway of this particular house, but really I was fighting with trying to get this slope to look right because I didn't want it to look too sharp of an incline because it's supposed to look like you drive your car up the slope to go park in the garages there. So I was fiddling around with the slope for quite some time. And then I basically started doing some rough terrain paints, and I say rough because I play around with terrain paints in this build too. I change it a lot, so get ready for that. I mentioned before, I'm normally super indecisive and I don't know what I'm doing when I go into things, and I'm using a reference to get some ideas, especially for landscaping. I'm not a huge fan of my own landscaping personally. I never really am a fan of my outside landscaping. I try, but I don't really like it. So I was playing around with terrain paints in this particular build, and you'll see that the terrain paint is going to change several times throughout the course of this build, especially in the backyard. Because again, I use a reference for the front of the house, but I don't typically have one for the back, so I am almost 100% winging it when we get around to the back of houses that I'm building. It's almost all out of my brain at that point, and that's a messy place to come from. It's a horrifying place sometimes. But after doing some rough terrain painting, I just went straight into the wallpaper. Again, using my reference here to get ideas for color palettes and textures that are going to go on the wall, and parts of it is me just coming up with it myself. I did cut around through this. I am very indecisive, so I cut when I'm picking colors for the most part, because this video would be forever long if I didn't, because it takes me 1,000 years to pick a color palette that I like, and I probably end up changing it again before the end of the video in the speed build anyway. So I do cut some parts out of these builds. I'm trying to leave more of the like decision process in, because I think some people like seeing that, because I don't know if it's deceiving, but don't be deceived. I don't know what I'm doing when I go into these builds, so I kind of like leaving some of the mistakes in the thought process in there, because it helps to show that I'm changing things all the time throughout the build process that I don't like, and I move it around, and I just like to advocate that that's totally fine. Never feel like you need to know what you're doing the very first go round, because a lot of the times I don't, and I wing it, and I think I'm a decent builder for what it's worth. So I mean, if you just want something passable, don't feel bad if you have to redo it. I'm pretty sure there's some people out there who can whip out houses off the top of their heads in 10 freaking minutes. I'm not one of them. I'm not. I'm never afraid to admit that. It takes me forever to do some of the simplest stuff. But in this case, we're working on detailing wallpaper, and because of the wallpapers that I choose, I do like to try to use all of the different parts of the set. So you got the end walls that have the different colors than the middle walls, and for some reason they look different in the lighting of the game, which kind of irritates me just a little bit, but I think it's just because of the lighting in the game. Speaking of which, I think about halfway through this somewhere, the color or the recording might look to change. I apologize for that. I have been playing around with my game since I removed CC out of it, trying to mess around with just graphic options and the way I recorded, and I do believe that that will change at some point. Like the last time I sat down to finish this, I was recording it slightly differently than I normally do. I still use OBS, but I was using like different settings, so I think it visually somewhat looked the same. I'm also playing around with G-Shade presets right now, so I do think I ended up tweaking them. I shouldn't do that when I'm in the middle of like recording something so that the video stays consistent looking, but the actual color might look a little bit different later down the line in the build, and I apologize. I think there was also even a graphical glitch I was seeing with shadows kind of seemingly jumping around, and I hope I fix that before the end of the video, but I've been playing around with settings, so if you notice that, yes, you're not crazy. The thing jumps, it looks different, it changes. I apologize. I've been playing around with my settings for a while, and it sometimes bleeds through in my videos when I do it in the middle of recording something instead of, waiting to a logical time to do that, which is not in the middle of recording, would probably be the best. But I'm trying right now to keep the textures of the wallpapers varied a little bit. I'm trying not to have the same color wallpaper throughout the entirety of the house. I really need to get better at that, trying to have different textures throughout the builds. This time was a little easier because I was following along with the reference that already had a different texture, so I was just sort of mimicking it and then carrying that around. But I do think sometimes my builds are very samey in terms of the wallpaper that I'm using, especially around the outside, but I'm not good at outside textures. We've discussed this already, so but kind of once I nailed down a basic general color palette, I move on to going into the outside. And here's the first change of terrain paint. So I kind of changed this white terrain paint to being an actual sidewalk texture. I think this is the texture from University. So you'll probably need that in your game. I likely will put this up for download, probably as a shell, because I can't guarantee what I'm going to use in the interior for the decoration. I could put up a decorated version of it once I'm done, but I will likely maybe have some CC in the decorated version of it. So the house itself as a shell should be relatively CC free aside from a few store objects that I'm pretty sure I used. That basketball hoop being one, and I think I used some more later on in the build that is gonna ultimately end up being store content. So I mean, if you're not opposed to having a couple pieces of that or maybe replacing it, I can definitely put up the shell and you should be pretty good. Now, I don't know exactly which expansions everything I use come from. I don't keep track of that. I have every expansion installed in my game at all times, but I don't actually know what stuff I'm using and from which expansion packs. I'm sorry, I'm not that thorough. Only thing I can definitely tell you is that this texture pattern I'm using right now on the ground is from University Life. And I do think I use some University Life windows later on, so that's a requirement. That's about as far as I can go with that because I don't know what textures I'm using or what content that I'm using in terms of expansion pack stuff. I just tell people I have them all, so assume that you need them all because I don't try to keep track of that. Apologize, that's a lot to keep track of, especially in the moment. It's a lot to go through. But I play around with the colors on these things a couple times too, never satisfied with the first thing that I pick. I think that's normal. I just don't agree with the first thing that I pick, and I fiddle around with it quite a bit. I don't really even know why I left that one little piece of foundation there. I think it's because in one of my references there was like this weird little pillar right by the driveway, and I'm like, okay, so I just left it there in my build too. So we have this little like pillar there. I kind of add this really short fence around because it was a curb. I don't know, it's not an actual curb, but in my mind it's a curb. it's what it's supposed to be. Just use your imagination, okay? I know it's not, just use your imagination. And then we do the porch railings. I like these railings. Again, University Life. Apparently I use a lot of University Life stuff in more modern current builds because, I don't know, it was a good expansion in terms of the content, especially the stuff that you could use to build with. But these, like, those fences have like poles on them, so it looks like there's support there even when there's technically not, because I deleted the actual pillars, but it's fine. Those mimic it. So then I just finished up some terrain paint and doing for the garden out front. I tried to decorate this garden as thoroughly as I could without it looking weird. I fail at that, at least in some parts of this video. I think it gets better before the end, but I most certainly dislike a lot of the stuff that I do at somewhere in the middle. Here are the University Life windows that I'm actually, again, a fan of. I like the University Life building options, all right? Just, if you don't have it and you like my builds, you should get it because I use it a lot. Probably more so than I should. I default to some of that stuff sometimes. It appeals to me. Just doing the colors, pretty simple. I just kept that like white tinted color palette throughout. And it's just a matter of picking windows that I think look good and making them work in the house. I was trying not to use move objects as much as possible during this build. I was trying to actually place the windows and stuff as they should be in the game that the game would allow. So I did this entire build without move objects on. So that was an accomplishment because I don't typically do that. I'm normally playing with move objects on all the time just because I like to play around with things, but I think I'm pretty sure this entire build was done without move objects on at all. So the whole thing should be functional. Should be being the key word there because you still got to play test these things. I tried to not to overdo it with the windows. I feel like sometimes I can. I like windows. Windows make a build look cool, and I sometimes put way too many windows in a build. And then when things don't line up and they're not even, it just makes me mad. Like the back windows here over this door, they'll probably still bug me when I look at them because it's like off. It's weird. Like it doesn't look centered and my mind is like, this is wrong. It needs to be centered. So I just have to come to terms with that. The windows in the garage, I normally don't go too far out with that. See, here I'm trying to work with the windows and trying to work with the actual like room that's behind the windows. I didn't want to have huge windows in the bathroom. That seemed like it might be a bit of an invasion of privacy. So I kind of scaled back on the number of windows I was about to put there because I think one of those rooms is a bathroom. And then I didn't want to have too many windows in what I'm hoping to be a kitchen when I'm done actually decorating this. Here we are where the actual like screen changes. So yeah, it looks a bit different. I was recording slightly different here and I had messed with my G shade presets at this point. Yeah, wasn't thinking about the fact that I had to record again and I had messed with those. So we're on to the outside of the terrain, the part that I normally struggle with. I don't really like most times. I like using these decorative rocks. I think they're fun. I use them a lot, probably more than I should, but I think, I don't know, it adds a little bit of something extra without just putting too many flowers everywhere. And I tried to scale back on the flowers. I use this Into the Future tree. That's another thing I recognize, another expansion. Into the Future bushes as well. The Into the Future stuff is pretty neat too. But I think I'm sort of mimicking a reference picture at this point in terms of the front. It's not exactly the same. I was just using it for inspiration, but they had a few decorative rocks about and some like bush work. And then at this point, I think I was pretty much winging it in terms of the actual flowers and the color palette of the flowers because I didn't really know what to do. I used a lot of dandelions in this build. I don't know, they need to weed their garden out front. But I use these little orange flowers to add to the little pop of yellow. So it's kind of like yellow and orange. And I think there will be a green one. Yeah, here it is. A little green one in there a little bit later. And trying to get something that looks like a reasonable landscaping. Don't know if I succeeded at that because I'm normally not very happy with my landscaping. This one didn't turn out too bad. It didn't turn out too bad. I did struggle with the back though. We'll get there in just a moment. But I used a little bit of these bushes just to add a little bit of, I guess, they kind of look a little unruly, so it's sort of like some little unkempt bushes around just a bit. A couple more dandelions, that's why there's dandelions. Not the best yard keepers all the time, just a passable garden, a nice little garden. Maybe they need to come out and do some garden work. I added this trim around the garden area, so just sort of like blocking it in for the garden, because there's a slope there from me messing with the terrain heights, and I thought it would be an interesting way to hide the slope a little bit, or just make the slope blend a bit more if it had a hard border. So I put this the same type of like curbing fencing around it, and then I'm just using some terrain paint to darken underneath the areas so that I don't know, if you have an area that's covered from the light, it'll probably be dirt underneath and not necessarily grass. So I was trying to add some like a little bit of detail by putting some dirt pathing underneath there. I did want to spice up the grass a little bit. It looked really dull, so I used this brighter green grass, which I will use again before this is over, and I think I need to use more of, because I think I needed to put it a little bit more in the front, or I intended to, and I don't think I do that before the end of this, so I'll have to touch that up at some point. But just following along with this trim around the outside of the gardens and just adding in the dirt underneath them because it is just covered from the sun. I also do the same thing by tracking the dirt all the way around the house, because again, the house would be blocking some of the sunlight from the grass, so it wouldn't be the cleanest in terms of the grass right around the edge of the house. So just to try to add a little bit of detail around that. I'm gonna add in more of the pathing at this point, taking back that same driveway type texture to the back of the house, and then I switch it to this like just white pathing because it's not really a driveway anymore, and I wanted to differentiate the two. Back here is where I really start to struggle, and I'm sorry, I think I tried to prune this down as best as I could without losing details of what I was doing in the build, but I played around with terrain paints back here because I still have a slope that I'm dealing with, but I didn't want to do the exact same thing as the front of the house by having the like box or the like gardening box type thing with the flowers in it. So I was trying to do something different, and just rough terrain painting initially, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I think I tried initially to do like a rock wall. Like I like rocks. Me and rocks, we have a thing apparently. But I tried to do rocks, and I don't think I liked it. I was trying to pick a tree, but I didn't want anything too big that would like cut through the house's roof, which is very much a thing. So I ended up with this tree here, and I don't leave it there, so don't get used to it. I ended up moving that tree out of the way because I attempted to use a rock wall first, and I didn't want to put the tree there. So what I was hoping I might be able to do is make it look like there are rocks that are up that slope, so that it's like a full like hard rock wall that goes straight up the side. But to do that, one, I would need to turn on my move objects, and shut up phone, but one, I would have to turn on my move objects, which would require me to break my rule of trying not to use it for this build, and two, it would be way too many rocks. It would just be so many to cover this. So I switched to terrain paint, which is what's happening now. I'm like, maybe I can get the illusion of rocks up a slope if I just use terrain paint. I don't like this in the end. I tried it, and I tried to make it work. I genuinely did. I was like trying to add maybe like the dirt coming off, and I would fix up that path at the bottom and just trying to make it look like this like dirt and rock slope that I could just maybe dot rocks around it, but have the terrain paint hiding the fact that the whole wall is not made of rocks. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and I don't like it. So I was trying to make it look almost like grassy, like it's not full rock. And then I think I tried it with some decorative rocks, just putting some of those rocks around. Yeah, and I still didn't like it. I struggled with the back of this for a while. I struggle a lot with the back of houses. All right, that's what I need to do. Need to work on new mission, new goal is to work on the back of houses, because I'm very bad at backyards apparently, and I just don't do them right. I don't know. I get rid of all of this, so again, don't get used to it. I tried placing down rocks and then maybe some bushes, and I was trying to place around some foliage, just some leaves, trying to spice up the back, and I hated it. I hated it. I didn't like it. I thought this looked a little too unruly for like the kind of relatively kempt suburban look that this house has. I don't know, I didn't like the bushes. I just got rid of the rock at this point and just did the brighter green grass texture, and I think I still end up toning this back a lot because it was too green. I fought with the back of this. I think we're getting close to me actually making a decision at this point, which is going to be purging a lot of these rocks and a lot of those bushes. I get rid of most of them at this point. I do put the first two back because I thought they made a nice transition from the bushes right before we get there. I just copied back some of the flowers, like maybe there's some flowers growing back here. I did also add just a bit of touch of green. So it's like there's this like pop of like bright green off of the slope, just so I can see that it's a slope because it kind of blended with the rest of the grass. So I thought giving it just a little bit of color variation from the bottom part of the lawn, which is not this color, worked a little bit. I do put more rocks. I like rocks, but I don't put as many rocks. They're just sort of a few lining about, and then I put some foliage around them in a much sparser way, and I think it turned out better than what I was doing before. So a couple more of those sort of like wild bushes, and then I used some of the green. I didn't really want to put flowers, so these are like yellowy flowers. I thought worked a little bit more because they look more green than yellow. So I dotted some of those around in the back and some dandelions because we all need dandelions growing all over our yard, because who actually has time to weed their yard, right? We're working, we got stuff to do, so we don't have time to do it. So I just dotted some dandelions about, some growing out of the pavement, out of the sidewalk, because they do. And then I just added a little bit of splotch of dirt underneath each of the rocks because, again, no light would probably mean the grass wouldn't really grow there that effectively. So I just put some rocks down and then touched up the dirt through the path, and I think that was passable at this point. So then we move on to the rest of the backyard. The tree gets a placement. I will change this tree before the end of this build. I end up switching it because of what happens with the backyard, which was a struggle. I said I want Lucas, I'm building this house for Lucas and Omar, to start working on gardening so that I can try to finish up the garden. So I wanted them to have a nice garden in their backyard, but I struggled on how to do the garden. And we'll see that in a moment. I think I'm finishing up the back porch here with just some railings on the stairs and then fencing around the back porch because you don't want anybody falling off the back porch and, having an accident. So I just touched up the back with basic railings, basic fencing. All this stuff is pretty straightforward. But the backyard I struggled with. I was trying to think of how to do like gardening boxes or like gardening plots in the backyard, but I didn't like everything I was doing. Like, it looked weird to me with them just sitting out there in the middle of the yard. I struggle with backyards, you guys. I don't know what to do. So I'm like, I didn't like the way these were looking, but they were supposed to be gardening boxes in the backyard, like that I could put plants in and they can grow plants out of. But I didn't like, I was trying to see what it could look like if I put pathing between them, like there's a walkway out to them, and I still didn't like it. So I undid it all, and I thought about putting in a greenhouse, which I will actually put in a greenhouse, and here's where the second piece of custom content comes in, or not even custom content, store content. If you wanted to use this build, I do use the roofs from the greenhouse. I think I only use the roofs from the greenhouse, but I do use roofs from the greenhouse. So I thought maybe a shallow greenhouse, because I didn't want to cover the windows that were right there, because it made sense to me that they could look out the back windows and see out the backyard. So I moved the greenhouse to the other side of the yard, and I like that a lot better. But because of where it was placed, I thought that tree would cut through the roof too much graphically, so I replaced it with the taller tree that is not as short and bushy at the bottom, so that the greenhouse has a little bit of a more space to breathe. And then I just give it some texture, some basic like broken, scraped up old paint texture, and I copy that all the way through to the windows and the doors. I use the stuff from Supernatural here, so it's not using the greenhouse windows that came with the store set, but I do use the greenhouse roof. So if you don't mind replacing that roof, if you don't have that set, you should be fine. I also converted all of my store CC into package files, so I don't actually know how that translates into other people's game. So I don't actually have them installed via my launcher it gets a little complicated and weird, but you may have to replace those depending if you download this. I just fixed the pathing from there because I actually liked the way that greenhouse was placed at this point, and moved that out back. And then I actually do get some flower plots in the back there just to grow some plants outside when the weather's nice, and you can move to the greenhouse when the weather gets pretty sucky and it's too cold to grow anything. So we got some indoor-outdoor planting, and I liked this little back area. I thought that this little greenhouse area was kind of cute, but that still doesn't mean that I was done struggling with this backyard, because I didn't know what to do on the other side of it. It looks really empty, and I tried to put a pool. I mean, a pool could work there. I wasn't hating the pool. I just feel like I don't really use pools that much. I don't know, like, you swim, your Sims like to swim, and they get like, what do you call it, athletic skill, but like, I was like, I don't know if I really like the pool. Like, a pool could work, and if you like the pool better, you could always just delete what I do back here and put a pool instead, because you got a little bit of space there for a pool. But I don't know, I tried it, but I was like, I wasn't the biggest fan of the pool. So I end up instead trying to go with like a kid's playground, because they do still have a younger son, and I was like, why not? We'll just do a playground. So I put the treehouse, and this treehouse apparently has a big freaking footprint, because I couldn't put this any closer to the edge of the lot than where it is right now. It was really weird. I don't know why, because it looks like I have plenty of space, but I think the game was complaining about a slope. There was no slope. I was very confused. This lot's pretty flat, so I have no idea why it didn't like me putting this there, but I just dealt with it, whatever. And then I worked on a swing set, again, trying not to use move objects, so I tried to place everything legitly, which takes some moving around. And instead of like doing a full-on jungle gym type thing, because I was gonna put the sandbox and the slide and stuff, I think I do end up putting a trampoline back there, because trampolines look like fun, and I don't think I used them enough in this game. So I figured, why not? Here's an opportunity to have a trampoline in the backyard. People around where I live have trampolines in their backyard all the time. I don't have one, but they look like fun. So I end up putting this trampoline over there and just a swing set, and I think I end up getting rid of this sandbox at some point too. But it's just a, you know, trampoline, swing set, and little like kids treehouse in the back, and should have some more space to be able to play back here. So, you know, I thought it would be a different way to do a backyard. I'm not very good at backyards. We've had this conversation already. We know where I stand with backyards, because then the problem is, how do I connect these to the rest of what I've done here? I'm just doing some terrain painting around the different objects, just trying to give them a little bit of detail to them. Just, you know, adding some shade or dark grass where they would be. I think I end up putting pavement underneath the trampoline, right? Yeah. So I put like a little like path or pavement underneath the trampoline. I wanted to connect it more to the path coming out of the back of the steps there, but I didn't really want to expand that all the way through to the backyard. I could have, but I wanted it to be mostly grass. So I just extend this far enough to go around the trampoline, and then I kind of just leave the rest as like open grass. This is why the sandbox got deleted. It was in my way. But the sandbox, I delete that, clean up the back path here. And I mean, that's pretty much the gist of this build. At this point, it's just cleaning up the pathing back here. I think I add a couple more details, a few more flowers, stuff like that. And that's pretty much the end of the exterior of this house. The inside is still completely empty at the point of me recording this video. I am probably going to stop recording this right now and go work on some of the interior, but I don't think I will finish before the next episode. So possible stream of finishing this, maybe. I don't think I'm doing another speed build of it though. So I apologize, but I don't think I'm gonna actually record the interior decoration of it. I've done 2 of these already. I think we're tired of me talking this entire time. So I'm gonna end this video, or in my commentary here, let the video play out for the rest. And I'm actually surprised I got this down to like 31 minutes, because this was actually quite a bit of footage. But I gotta try to get it down to a decent amount. But hopefully you guys all enjoy it. If I don't put a download up on this yet, it might be there now if you're watching this later down the line, because I don't know if I'm ready to put it up just yet. I might do wallpapers and then I might upload it, which is not done just yet. But I'm gonna end this one here. So thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, then please give it a like or don't, that's up to you. But I do hope that you'll come back and join me for more Sims 3 speed builds here on the channel. Thanks all, bye-bye.